So I have handouts. I had 20. I wasn't sure we were going to show up. And here the room's got like 200 people. So folks are going to have to share. And Heidi's got the handouts. So what we're here to do today is not to have a debate. This is not a debate about the team law. This is just about what things as a group, whether you're in conservation or within the landscape, that you think work and don't work. So this law's been around for a number of years, since originally 1953, I believe, is that what it says here? Or at least the statute for that part. But I think folks in this room coming from different sides of the equation, a team, have had different experiences that maybe they think parts of it don't work and parts of it are too restrictive and parts aren't restrictive enough. And we're looking to capture that today, word for word, with Joe DeFrank back here with the video camera, and then we're going to produce notes and share those notes with DeMotta, and so have a discussion with DeMotta about things I think we can agree on. Because I think there's things that people are going to disagree on, but I'm always one of those people who thinks that we agree on the majority of what's wrong, and we disagree on the minority in most cases. So I'm hoping that we can get some improvements to happen. So this isn't about me talking, this is about people in the room raising their hand, and we don't have a microphone, so I'll have to repeat the question. And we will record it, and if people have comments on it, that's fine, but we're not here to react in a negative or positive way about people's comments. This is really an information gathering session. So I'm surprised how many people showed up. I guess people really like a lot of TVs for these reasons here. So why don't we, everyone, 20 people have a copy of the TV. Why don't we start off with who's got something that they like or don't like about the TNE law at the moment, or should I start? I saw your hand earlier. Do you have a comment one way or the other on the TNE rules? Okay. Well, I'll also mention something else that's kind of interesting. Earlier in the morning, we recognized some of the leaders of our industry. One of them actually got this law written, and that was Garrett Webb. How many years ago Garrett was that?
I don't remember anything the other.
Okay, well anyway, it's interesting that we have someone here to help motivate the writing of these rules back 20 or 30 years ago. Has everyone here used TNE species on a project? Used a red label, a red tag? So we have some red tag users. Why don't I put Rick on the spot then for a minute? Rick, if you use red tag species, you sell them too. What's one thing you think works really well, or maybe should be looked at?
The approved list of what plants can be sold, what endangered plants can be sold. I think that could use some revision. Also, enforcement is also. I feel like we don't necessarily have to jump through a lot of hoops, but we do go through a process. And when you see other certain and endangered plant species being sold that aren't going through the process, that's what's frustrating. So enforcement and also doing a revision of the approved list.
So when it comes to the approved list, there's things that belong on there that aren't on there, and there's things that are on there that probably shouldn't be on there. Is that the?
Yeah.
Can I just comment? Is that right?
Oh, go nuts.
Okay, so there's administrative, there was legislation that was passed supported by LIC and this is Europe, and various botanical gardens, and it required the DLNR to allow for the sale of threatened endangered plants, provided they were propagated, cultivated stock. And out of that, when those rules went out for hearing, they said, okay, we're going to establish a committee that will say, if you want
a law, it gets enacted by a representative body like the legislature, in this case the state legislature. Then the actual enactment of it, the practice of it, has to be interpreted by administrative rules. And so what he's saying is that the way the law was passed was you couldn't sell TNEs, right?
No, you said you could.
You could.
You could.
Unless,
There was a do not list originally.
okay, and then,
That's what it was designed for, right? It was a do not grow list. And today it's more of a approved list instead of a don't grow. So instead of saying don't grow silver swords or don't grow something else, it's okay to grow this.
okay. So in other words, it was a change that was done administratively. And that those are a little different or easier in some ways to change than legislation.
Right. So we're talking about the Hawaii administrative rules, which the Department of Land and Natural Resources wrote for this law, and I were directed from the law to write the rules to meet the conditions of the bill that was passed. The difficulty with this is there's a public involvement process. It's a little trickier than going through the ledge. The ledge can also be done, but if you ever try to change administrative rules in the state, it take years. Then going to the ledge will just take Okay. So here, I think part of your question may have been that the committee hasn't met in 10 years too, or something, right?
Yeah, I guess that wasn't making a question. It's spouting on. But yes, the committee has stopped meeting, and now Maggie is saying that they are looking at how this rule, what this rule is, and how it's being administered. Should there be changes? Because technically, when the rules went out, they said all TD plants are allowed for sale under these conditions. And then you go to a committee if you think the plant should not be used commercially.
So it's a blacklist, not a whitelist.
And and they never made a list, right? So now there's suddenly there's a list, so that's something.
And the list, I think, comes from not necessarily DLNR saying that this is what's allowed. It's from what has been applied for in the past, which has gone through that process already, so that future applicants have a record of where these sources came from. And I think that's where the list came from. But as far as now trying to add plants to it, because we've come across a few plants that have been given to us over the years that we've experimented with and do great in the landscape, but have never been applied for in the past, and we can't get those plants into the marketplace or into a landscape.
What you're applying for is the tag.
It's the tag to sell.
To sell.
The tag to sell. Yeah. And so I think that's where this list just comes from. It comes from in the past how certain plants have been approved before. Is what is out there.
Okay.
What I think I like about the laws that exist is that it protects the wild sources. And I think it's a pretty easy argument to make that when you have a species that has under 50 individuals in the wild, like the hemp species, that having anybody out there trying to collect it, besides a few very well tried and trained botanists who are totally focused on making it survive and not go extinct, that having other people out there trying to get seeds or propagules off of it is not something that we want, right? So I think that's where that comes from. Now, whether the list is rational based on those factors is another question. And it's difficult. I mean, if I was administrating that, I can understand why you might just go with what's already out there. Because if you have to go back and say, well, to propagate, so like Kamehameha. Well, it's almost extinct in the wild, if not extinct. But it's really easy to grow, right? So, but you have to make that evaluation of 350 species that are listed now. That's a hard thing to do. So I think that's probably where that, was an easier way to go to administrate that rule. But I think we keep in mind why the rule was originally put in place. We didn't want people wild collecting, and we still don't want people wild collecting. Right?
Yeah.
Certain plants, yes.
I'm
Well,
talking
I don't-
T&Es. The law is about T&Es.
My personal viewpoint is not what we're talking about here today, but I would just say briefly that I think that from not being a T&E, but working with T&Es, it would seem that the survival of the T&E species is the highest priority. That's what that is. I'm not sure that I completely agree that in situ and ex situ are the only two options for T&E species. And I think that's where we all have different viewpoints in the room, so I didn't really want to debate that, but I think that it's about the plant. It's about the survival of the plant. And making sure in the long run that we have a plan. And I think probably everyone in this room agrees with that point how it gets. It's how we get there, whether we include other more creative ways to do it, or whether we're just relying on an in situ or ex situ environment to keep a plant in existence. And so I agree that the plant should survive. And I just think there may be some new ways of doing it, and we might have a conservation value. So that's I didn't really want to it's my personal but Michael?
Having worked both sides of the fence at this point, working at NTBG now and having had my own nursery in the past, I do see it from both perspectives and to a degree, and I agree with Margaret in that I agree with you in that the survival of the species is of ultimate importance, but the survival of the current existing really rare plants is of ultimate importance too. And if the commercialization of a really rare species is going to threaten the remaining wild plants, then that's a bad thing. Because if untrained or just people that are just out there to make money because I have the first of this in cultivation are going to destroy the habitat by trampling, and I've seen this, then that's a very bad thing. Going back to your point, survival of the species is about, Brigamia would be pretty much extinct if it weren't being propagated by the Belgians or the Dutch or whoever it is by the millions, and how easy it is to grow even for us. So that's the fine line, and I think it would ease everyone's minds a whole lot if during the process of applying for permits and tags to sell T&E, if there was really good transparency, if the person who's making the application has a real clear and a credible genealogy of where in the cultivated world this plant came from, this propagule came from, so that you can't say like, yeah, somebody went out, collected seeds and say, well, no, but I got it from so-and-so in cultivation. It has to be really clear. It has to be a real believable, source that this came from cultivation and not from the wild, because it's so easy to create a gray area.
You're talking about where we are right now, where we have a list and we're all trying to figure out what plants we can use from the list. But how do we go forward and add or subtract things from that list?
I think its understanding is that basically the list it was the easy way to go, is just to stick with the list of plants that are already available. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the correct way to do it. I think if we're going to move forward and they're going to open up the whole process and take everything into consideration, then the players involved, those who are looking for the permits to sell these rare plants, and the agency involved with administering the law, all need to sit at the same table, and everybody has to there has to be trust between the two parties, or all the parties involved, before anybody's going to be willing to move forward. Like I said, I've seen it from both sides, and I understand the guys who want to grow the plants and making them available for whatever reason, be it for the dollar or for the survival of that species, whatever the reason is. When they're applying to the state guys for tags, the state guys have to trust that these people are telling them the truth as to the source of their plants. So until they strike that balance and that trust is there, it's going to be really hard for both sides to understand and appreciate the other side's argument.
Okay. We've had a couple of people talk really passionately some finishes. Someone else have something they'd like to bring up? Well, okay, right.
I know when we first started our nursery, and I had mentioned this in the talk that I gave previous, that I bought a lot of plants from Pat's Island Delights. And, yeah, and I didn't know anybody that were growing the plants back there. I just thought that this was the coolest place that had all of these awesome plants. And I pretty much bought at least one of every single plant that he had for sale. Now, which grower that he got them from, because I know that he was reselling them from other growers, I have no idea. But I don't think, when I applied for my T&E species, and I put where I got the plant from, and I put Pat's Island Delights, I don't think that floats.
That probably shouldn't have floated.
Yeah. So, I mean, but now I'm at a loss because that's where I got it from. And it did come with an endangered plant tag when I did buy it. But now I just, other than knowing that it came from Pat's Island Delights, I have no idea where they came from elsewhere. And but that's being said about that stuff. I totally agree with Mike. In the future, if this discussion were to go further, it would be good to understand the ecological impact that any native plant, threatened or endangered or not threatened, whatever, would have by being put into the commercial industry. And I totally see how plants so rare in the wild population could be damaged by it being brought into commercial nurseries. And at the same time, I think I think the process does need to be stringent, but if the process is going to be more stringent, I think the enforcement also needs to be on the back end. And when another topic is the price of the tags that we buy right now. It's pretty cheap, and it's doable. And I have no issues with that, and it could go up, and I can see and justify the prices of it being raised. But to a certain point for us, I can see if the price point per tag does become higher, then it could be simply justified to pass it on to the consumer. And even if you raise it, say $1, you can pass that $1 on to the consumer. But when you sell that plant through the retail stores, you're passing that $1 onto the retail store. And a lot of the retail stores have price points. And right now, like for example, I have Ojai's Tasmania at a certain price point. If I were to add on 25 cents to that price point, it takes the retail price from $6 and something cents to $9.97. That's the next jump in price. So I think it's not just passing on $1 to the consumer. You're passing on over $3, which could hurt the sale of the plant. And that's just another tidbit.
Interesting. Are there any other hands here?
Well, one of the points of change involved
Can you speak up, please?
one of the points of changing the law to begin with was the state that keeps off the plants in the wild and make them easily accessible at nurseries, so people wouldn't go out in the forest and try to collect them. And they were supposed to be distributed through the botanical gardens, and with paperwork that showed that was legal, and then they were put out into the trade. So that was one of the arguments for making them.
Yeah, a lot of these plants end up on the mainland on eBay or something like that.
And I might add continuation of that thought, but with this law requiring the DLNR to require TV commercial use first to be done. We were looking at countries like South Africa and a few other places where they had similar rules, and they found if their thing was like, this is an opportunity to use for education about protecting natives in the environment, the whole commercial aspect of it. If it were, and so that, I think that was the vision of the committee at that time. And when it ceased to begin to exist, we kind of lost that interest. But I think, again, we have an opportunity to re-look at this rule and start educating in a really positive way around friendly.
Well, our time is wrapping up, and we're going to have another panel speak about alternatives. But does anyone else have any one or two last comments? We're recording this, and we're going to take this all out.
I would just say that when people are trying to go through the permit the tag labeling process to do things the right way, it seems to me that those people are not going to be ones that will threaten the wild population. I mean, this is what we want, and the influence of people getting to the general public will increase the amount of awareness for native plants, maybe threatening endangered plants, maybe, you know, the Hawaiian endemic specifically, and because we have a real problem in Hawaii that even though we made great progress with education of the necessity to use native plant material, the truth is that still a very small percentage of the general population. And the more support we have for the use of native plants in a landscape, the more legislative power we will have as a group. There may be, you know, a real native plant society like that on the mainland where they have a big sector of the population that are really passionate about native plants, and they help conservation programs, they help funding, they help lobbying, and so, you know, it'll be a wonderful thing if the powers that be don't see this commercialization of certain endangered plants as an incentive to go out and collect wild material, which most of the wild material are in really remote areas that, you know, could be life-threatening in some cases. So, you know, I don't see that except in certain cases where they're next to the trail or something. That's rarely the case.
I think we have one more person in the room.
So, I'm not as familiar with this as everyone else is, but as a consumer and someone who's being advocate of using native plants in design, the more we keep pushing forward, and architects and designers and the community want to use native plants, the more native plants are going to want to be available. And that ultimately pushes it back onto the grower. With this law, other than tags being going on to being more costly, how would a grower go about trying to get more plants on that list? Because as consumer requests grow, the grower is going to ultimately be the person who has to right now do this until what Lila said, we have a big collaboration with everybody and put together. Right now it's being pushed on the grower.
Well, I think someone like Rick would probably best be able to answer that question about how you add a plant right now. It's even possible. It's not a cultivation.
Right now, the way it stands is we can't get any more plants added on, you know, the approved list, and I'm not even sure what the total approved list is. All that we've ever propagated is stuff that we've purchased from others that have gotten the permit before. I don't even know what the total number of species or what all of the species are that are on this, are on the list that have been sold so far. So, yeah, it's hard to say.
And I would say even beyond threatened and endangered species, we have a lot of ecotypes, we have a lot of things that aren't even being looked at that need to go into cultivation, but they're still illegal to take from the wild. I mean, you know, if there's a process that responsible people can actually get this stuff into cultivation somewhere, because they're disappearing whether or not we do anything.
Well, it's not illegal unless it's DNA. Unless you
Well,
go back
you have to
to state land.
Well, we you know, even with a native plant initiative, we're on permit where we plant 20 species, which is not, you know, a lot. You know, I mean, that's just start. It's just a start. I mean, there's so many other things that are possible in this whole realm, and this is all related to this kind of law. So I just, you know, the way I look at it is there has to be a dialogue between all the parties that are concerned, and everyone's passionate. We want to see our native flora and fauna thrive. You know, we've had enough abuses of the environment. Now it's time to do something, but the only way we'll do this is with large numbers. You don't have large numbers if two parties aren't talking with each other and actually cooperating. So
yeah, and then I think another thing that's hard too is, like, you know, you go hiking and you see a plant that is just covered with thousands of fruits, and within each fruit there's hundreds of seeds. But then you gotta go and fill out the application. You gotta go back and fill out the application. You know, get the application approved, and then if you feel like going all the way back hiking to go collect it after, and hope that the seeds are still there, or even worse, like for the Native Plant Initiative, when we timed this one Pritchardia that, you know, I was so excited to finally get to go and collect seeds from, and we waited months we saw tons of fruits on top of there, but they weren't ripe, so we gave it a couple of months, and we all made this exciting trip to go back and collect them, and when we got there, somebody beat us to the punch, and there wasn't a single fruit left. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, related to that, I mean, I've gone up like 4 or 5 times hiking, and sometimes I'm up by myself because no one else has the time. So, you know, checking, and they're not right because we don't know the phenology. Everything is, you know, it's you're there or you're not there. And it's like, you know, and it's all donated supplies. It's all, you know, we're trying to do this because we are passionate about it. It's not, we're not going to go out and take something that will threaten a wild population, because that just defeats everything. You know, the important thing is the land and the plants in the forest. You know, that's the important thing.
Well, I think we've got to cut this off now. I mean, we have a second panel that's going to take precedent. But what I would say is that, you know, we just barely scratched the surface today. This probably should have been a much longer panel, but there's much other questions to have to answer to each TNE species besides what we talked about today. So feel free to shoot me an email or go to the website, xeriscapes.com, and put in your comments if you have things that you want to share in public or feel uncomfortable, or you want to keep it anonymous. You can send that to me, and we're going to compile the comments today and have a working group at the landscape industry come up with some more ideas, because I think how you use the plant after you have it is just as important as trying to get permission to use the plant. So there's a lot of things that we should discuss today. So I'm going to turn this over to Heidi. Heidi is going to be the moderator, and we're going to have a couple of native plant experts come up here, and what your job is to challenge them to come up with an alternative that you like, or the plant that you have that you don't think there's a native plant alternative. And so your job is to say, I'm looking for Eldorado plant, and I like it because it's waxy and yellow, and they're going to come up with something.
Oh, is that how we're doing it?
Yeah.
What's an Eldorado?
This is a long piece of mine. It's like all these alternatives are like the height of the plant is the alternative. So every just 4 plants listed as compared to the reason why I'm choosing them in the first place. So this is a quick fire. This is a test run from Mike and Rick. They got to answer.
Thanks. I thought this was the TNA session, not the TNE session.
Am I moderating?
We can. This, can you guys hear this? Is this?
Now it's a Q&A session.
Okay.
Went from TNA to TNE to Q&A.
Go ahead, Heidi, it's all yours.
Who has an alternative for that Rick's least favorite plant? Lawai fern.
Me? The white fern If for those of you who don't know, all of the ferns that we call Lawa'e today, and it's highly debatable, and I take on the debate all the time. But to my understanding, the Lawa'e fern that we see in all the landscapes is not Hawaiian. And when I say it's not Hawaiian, it's not native, nor is it a Polynesian introduction. It was first, I believe, observed in Hawaii in 1919 in Kipahulu on Maui. And so it hasn't even been here for 100 years, yet it's growing everywhere. And the name Lawa'e, though, is a true native name. And I'm not qualified enough to talk about it because I don't come from that island, so I'll pass it over to Mike.
Very well-developed skill, Rick. So Rick is talking about microsorm spectrum, which he happens to have on his table out there. You know, you can see why the Hawaiians would think or use the same name because it spreads the same way, and I kind of think it's in the same family too, isn't it? Yeah. So it's just, and as in the landscape application, it's hard to replace the non-native one that we're all talking about because it can take pretty dry conditions, and it's pretty durable. But if you are wanting to use native ferns and you had the right places for the native Lawa'e, or pe'ahi is the other name that it goes by, you could use that in that application. And what I tell people is if you're going to use it, it needs to be in a spot where it's going to get partial sun. It likes to be in shady conditions, although I've seen it in full sun places, but where I've seen it in full sun, it's also in the back of a wet valley where it's clouded in all the time too. So it prefers shaded conditions, fairly moist, rich soil. It's sort of an epiphyte, so it'll grow on other stuff. So if you get a lot of mulch, it'll grow, it'll spread all over the mulch, and then moist and then protected, as little wind as possible. And so yeah, you can use it, but those are the conditions that it's going to be happiest in, and it's going to thrive. If you're going to, in other applications though, anybody who was at my talk, I would tell you use palapalai, because palapalai is really durable. I've seen it in the wild growing on dry, brown granular dirt slopes, as well as heavy shade. So full sun to heavy shade. Again though, as long as it gets irrigated and you don't let it fully dry out, it can take most conditions. So either of those ferns, you can use the native Lawa'e under the right conditions, and then palapalai or kupu almost anywhere else.
And the reason why I passed it off to Mike was because the name Lawa'e comes from Kauai. And on all other islands, that fern is known as pe'ahi. And so whenever people bring up the debate of, oh, Lawa'e is a truly native plant. It's been here for centuries because it was composed in oli that predate, European contact. Well, of course, the name predates European contact, but the plant doesn't. The plant that is being referred to in whatever oli is being discussed in is pe'ahi.
That's the nice thing. No, Lawa'e. That's the nice thing about using a lot of natives, because it comes with a lot of cultural background too. I mean, there's stories about all of the native plants for the most part that can be used, like for our purposes at the Botanical Garden for interpretation. We're teaching kids about, connecting kids to the land. This is the native plant or the native fern that comes from that area. But the names, anybody who speaks with native Hawaiian speakers regularly will tell you that pronunciation and name changes it's like talking to somebody from the deep south and somebody from the northwest, because they use their preference for different words varies from one part of the country to the other. And I've had the great fortune of being able to talk and converse in Hawaiian with old timers from all the islands, and their vocabulary varies from and even pronunciation varies from one island to the next, and even from one district to the next. So you talk about Lawa'e, but yeah, there's a lot of poems, chants, and mele written on Kauai referring to the fragrance of Lawa'e, and that's the pe'ahi is the one they're talking about, microsorm spectrum. So that's where the connection from the plants to the people on the land really plays out when you start using the native stuff.
While we're talking about ferns, it's great if there are a lot more variety and diversity of ferns available in cultivation, because there's a dearth of, there's a great fern flora here, but again, we don't know how to propagate them, we don't know how to make the numbers.
That's why K. Lynch is so important.
Yes.
So, not to put her on the spot, but without K, we wouldn't even have a bunch of stuff that we are able to grow from as far as ferns go. So I know we use K a lot. Well, not use you, but we appreciate
we propagate UK. Yep, and thank you, Kay, and, what?
Right. That was good.
I wanted, if everyone couldn't hear what Kay Lynch was saying, whoever needs a niche in the market, we need more people to grow native ferns. I would ask for Nephrolepis exaltata, the giant kupu-kupu, what's the other name? And uluhe.
Can we grow that?
I've grown it with a balling spade at Ho'omalohia, but if we had uluhe, the land healing fern, that would be a fabulous one in cultivation.
These are guys that didn't come to my talk. So anybody who's at my talk will know that we have a fern propagation thing going on at NTBG. And I'll leave it at that for now.
More people need to grow.
Yeah, that's very true.
Grow natives.
Okay, next plant.
Okay.
Fire the next one.
Okay, who's got the top plant that they love to use?
Pick an easy one.
Like a native alternative instead. They don't think one exists. This challenge is down. How about a street tree that actually just got nuts everywhere and roll the seed and all that? Tell me a street tree that's gonna take over.
Native hibiscus, and let it be a hibiscus, not a lobiscus. They want to be a tree.
Hibiscus Waimea gets to be a beautiful big tree. If you ever see it in the wild, especially in some of the deeper valleys, this is a 40-foot tree that starts branching at 10 feet up and gets big and hundreds of flowers in season. You can spot them in the drainages in Waimea Canyon by all the white and pink you see down in the valleys. Gorgeous tree.
Imagine what a beautiful street or park tree that would be, and in all of our landscapes, to not cut it into a little
Bush.
lollipop of, poor thing, lobiscus.
You know, the tree that I really like, but people are going to say that, oh,
Just shoot it, Rick. Come on, just tell us.
lonomea.
Oh, I
Yes.
agree.
Yes.
Aulu, lonomea, but it does have seeds on there, but they're not round, and you're not going to slip on them unless you're drunk.
Speaking from experience.
No, just
And they make a
because
beautiful
you know people for example, coal is always one that was used a lot, but people slip on them because of their hard round fruits, and so let's replace it with the non-native coal with the gushy fruits, which I have slipped on. Yes.
I love Olopua. Olopua, 100% rat predation, the predation of the fruit. And that's the problem. No recruitment, or very low recruitment in the wild. It's a major component of the dry forest. It's tough. It has hardly any pests when you grow it. But we can't get enough. We can't get seedlings. We can't get seeds. And so this is something that would be a great cooperative effort, and then get native trees. No, and it's got small fruit.
It's in the olive family.
Yeah.
Native olive.
And so it doesn't make much mess.
But from the cultivation side, it does grow really slow, and it's kind of difficult to. I mean,
You gotta put it in the ground.
No, yeah.
When you put it in the ground, it grows nice.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah. Next, quick fire.
Good job.
Okay, Manila palm.
Royal palm.
Manila.
Oh, Manila palm.
Lolu.
Any Pritchardia, any
Yeah.
Lolu would beat a Manila palm.
Any Pritchardia from the island that you're from, or the area that you're from, and so yeah, and that can be said for Fijian fan palms. Nothing against Fijians or Tongans. It's just we're in Hawaii, so let's use Hawaiian fan palms. Next.
That was easy.
What's
Turf.
Talking about Hawaiian grasses today, I had a garden we took care of the Kakona grass.
Kakona kona.
We couldn't walk on it, so we made a place for it to, grow up instead. So how about for walking?
A lot of the grasses that are native are annuals, and the ones that are perennials are more bunch-like. The closest so far that we've seen I've seen is aki grass, but that only works in certain applications. There's Panicum faurii that unfortunately is a short-lived grass, but man, it looks just like your typical lawn type of grass. I have a picture on my computer that's hooked up right now.
Oh.
I want to show. So go ahead,
Sure.
talk, but I'll show something else. So don't.
Is there something other than grass?
Yeah.
Walk on?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to show.
I guess I'm the.
It's oh, here.
Open the lens.
Wait,
the projector.
but tell me when you're gonna, because it's gonna blind my eye.
Okay. And then where's the lawn? Right there. Boom. So this is a lawn that has some weeds in it once it turns on.
Rick needs visual aids.
Well, we'll talk about something else. About other lawn alternatives.
I want to say, do we have to be able to walk on the grass? I like when a good landscape architect gives us a maintenance pathway that's also where everyone wants to shortcut, a beautiful stepping stone, pavers, amidst the aki grass that you can have tall and never have to mow or weed eat. A nice path.
So this is a lawn
nice.
in Kauai that you can see some bunchy weeds in the middle, and you can see what looks like rubbish, the little white rubbish everywhere. The little white rubbish is actually bacopa flowers. That's a whole area, quarter acre at least, of their field. There's nothing but bacopa.
Is that like a detention area? Or is
Huh?
that a detention area, or is it just a?
No, it's just, I think it just slipped in, and then it just eventually consumed the rest of the area.
And you can walk on the whole.
And you can totally walk it. It's like this tall. Like they don't even know that it's there. And if I didn't, well, I mean, it's a good thing. But if, the only reason why I took a picture of it is because I was visiting the school for a project, and then when I walked out, I was just like, I'm totally surrounded by bacopa. So that's, yeah, and that's the cabana over there. So there's the bacopa cabana.
You were dying to say that.
That's so funny.
But
That was the whole purpose.
We got to be lively after lunch.
It's a big book.
Okay, we have time for one or two more plants. One of these guys come up with an idea of alternative for. Who's got some tough ornamental plant they always buy, but they look to find something else they can buy instead? Well, what's the most popular plant you buy when you go to the
There's right there.
Plumbago. People use plumbago everywhere.
there's a native plumbago.
The ground cover one, what is one that's been used in the same way that the blue flower is
Oolé.
Like a big bunching one, like the blue one you're talking about?
Auriculata.
Oolé, our native Hawaiian rose.
Ule, and then Pohina, when you trim it up, I've seen hedges 4 feet tall with Pohina.
And winter, because blue flowers, tough, smells good.
Yeah. It takes a while for it to get trimmed up that tall, but it will.
Okay, next.
Oh, I got it. Hold on. Right here, I actually have a picture.
Wow, that's very
How's that? That's a native, it's a plant in the native, in the pleuria family. It's called Hao, H-A-O, not H-A-U. The botanical name is Rowolfia senogensis, or senogensis.
It's fragrant.
And then another plant is Polei. That one is also in the plumeria family as well, Apostoliski. Next.
Is Hole a T&E?
Huh?
Is Hole a T&E? Is that wow?
Not,
Compta, right?
What's the
genus?
Ocrosia compta.
Ocrosia paleacula is.
Yeah, Kauaiensis is. Just curious.
We got a question for bird paradise. A replacement for bird of paradise. Mike?
Sorry, what's the
Got
question?
a replacement, a native replacement for bird of paradise?
Bird of paradise.
That's in the audience and not up there.
Not with those flowers. Not with anything that flowers like that.
Yeah, not similar to that flower, but
There are some sedges and
Mako, if that was ever available for cultivation.
there's some sedges and stuff. There's a macarina that similar in leaf shape and all that. It maybe requires more moisture though.
Yeah.
You get the dryland one, the Macarena, the small bluish green one.
Yeah.
And it get bunches up into big clumps. Mariscoides, yeah. It bunches up. I think Aki is Uki or Aki? Gani,
My
yeah.
name is Uki. Uki, like Uki.
Hey, no inside jokes.
Okay, one last question, and then we gotta close this up. Urban?
Yeah, what a thorny hedge. Thorny hedge.
Well, that's the beauty of natives, most of, willy willy, when it's young.
So you want thorns
Oh.
in the hedge.
Puakala,
Yeah.
short-lived though.
Yeah, there's not too much thorny stuff.
If you grew alahee and pruned it, which it doesn't take well of pruning, but if you grew alahee and continue topping it, the side branches get real stiff. And it's not thorny, but if you planted it densely and
Hard
made it
to
too
walk
real thick,
through.
you wouldn't want to walk through it.
Is the thorniness
It'll eat you up.
There's a ground cover right here.
Sugar is too low.
That is nice, but it's very low. It's a low ground cover. But it's a really nice ground cover. But you would have to be walking on it barefoot in order to feel its effects. But if you ever felt it, you'd never want to walk.
It's related to a naturalized one they call puncture vine.
Yeah.
The seeds have big, fat, thick thorns on
And
it.
the Hawaiian name is Nohu.
No, like the
Same
rockfish.
Yeah, this is the
Rockfish.
name. The Hawaiian name is Nohu, which is also the same name as a scorpion fish. So you know you have to step on the scorpion fish and don't climb. I think it's like Nohu. I would have to say maybe Boulay again. Because Boulay is a very difficult plant to walk through when it's nice and big. But yeah, it doesn't have any more.
Well, thank you, Rick, Michael, and Heidi, and thank you for coming to this evening break the ice, I guess, discussion. So if you have questions for anyone here, you can email me,